things, and I'll close out with this. I'll tell you a few things. One, historically, the Muslims had something in that, you know, when a merchant comes into town, you don't have to ask where they got their goods from. This is what the fuqaha taught, you know, that there's bara'a and asli, and if it's a halal thing to purchase, you don't, لا تسألوا عن أشياء تبدى لكم تسؤكم. Don't ask about things if you find out it's, you know. So if somebody comes in, he's a merchant, you don't ask where he got it. You can buy it if it's halal. That's traditionally how they viewed it. I think in societies where most wealth acquisition was relatively just, that's fine. I personally don't agree with that opinion today for things that we know about and that we're able to do something about. And the single most important thing, I think, to deal with the impoverished conditions that we're living in this country is to begin to empower people to take back their communities. We have to make our own clothes, stop buying clothes that were made in sweatshops. We have to, really, this is what we have to do. We have to reestablish family as the central, most important unit of a society, because Islam is about preservation of family. It's one of the 6 fundamentals. Preservation of family. If you look now in the inner cities at the disintegration of the family, because if you take the father out of fatherhood, if you take the father out of motherhood, if you take the brother out of brotherhood and the sister out of sisterhood, what do you have left? You have the hood. That's all you've got left. That's it. And people cannot survive in those conditions. They will die. Camden, New Jersey, Chris Hedges wrote a whole section on his book, The Empire of Illusion, about that town. They're going to dismantle the police force in Camden. They don't have money, so they're just going to regionalize it. Highest crime rate in America. Just leave the poor people there. There's children on the streets. Doesn't matter. Because these are throwaway people. What has to happen, and the Muslims, and I'm going to chastise here the immigrant community. I really believe that the immigrant community made an ethical mistake as well as a strategic mistake in not seriously taking the existing indigenous Muslim communities that you find in the inner cities to heart, and recognizing that they had a moral obligation to help them build community centers, to help them build their mosques. It is a disgrace when Siraj Wahaj, Imam Siraj, went all over this country building mosques for the entire Muslim community, mostly immigrant community, and he couldn't find the money to build a beautiful center in Brooklyn. That's a disgrace to this community. Because as far as I'm concerned, the single most important community for the Muslims in the United States of America is in the inner cities. It is the single most important. And I'm not saying this gratuitously. I'm saying this from my heart. It's the opinion of Dr. Khalid Blankenship, who I consider one of the most brilliant Muslim scholars that we have, not just in the United States, but on the globe. And he has said that to me many times. So we have to be real about helping these communities. We want to get the best and the brightest, give them scholarships so that they can give back. We don't want the migration up, right? This is what happened with the black middle class and upper middle class. They just moved up and they didn't pick anybody else up with them. And now they're completely alienated, and you have completely separate African American communities in the United States that can't relate to each other. Right? And the situation is so bad in places like East Oakland. Really, it's so bad, and it's right next door. It's right next door. We're seeing social disintegration, and we have a moral responsibility as a Muslim community. We have a moral responsibility to serve the underserved. The Prophet ﷺ promised us that you are given victory by the weakest amongst you. And he meant du'afa, he meant like poor people. That's who he was talking about. And he lived amongst them. And Allah commanded him to be patient with the poorest of people who call on their Lord in the morning and in the evening. Be patient with them. Be with them. Don't hang out with the rich people. Hang out with the poor people. That's what he told them. Allah told him to be with those people, elevate them, lift them up, bring them up. We need to dignify poverty in this country, because poverty in this country is a blemish. It's like something's wrong with you. You're like a moral leper. It's God's got his. This is Protestantism at its worst. This idea somehow that God's grace is when you get lots of money. Matthew 19:21, quoting Christian scripture here. Matthew 19:21, when the man comes to Jesus and Jesus says, go and sell your garment and give it to the poor, right? Go and sell your goods and give it to the poor, and you'll have a treasure in heaven. If you want to be perfect, go and sell your material possessions and then give it to the poor, and then you can get a treasure in heaven, and you follow me. The Catholics took that very seriously, and that's why in the Catholic tradition, the highest thing is to renounce wealth. That's what monks do. They have a vow of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Chastity, poverty, and obedience. All those nuns in those Catholic schools, they were all working for free. They were working for free. The Prophet ﷺ chose poverty over wealth. He was given a choice to be a slave prophet or a king prophet, and he chose to be a slave prophet. He lowered his standard of living so that other standards could be raised up. That's a challenge. That's a moral challenge for people. It's a moral challenge. Wealth is a dangerous thing. Sayyidina Umar, he said, Sayyidina Ali said, halalahu hisab wa haramuhu iqab. What's halal from wealth, the permitted, is a severe reckoning, and what's haram is a chastisement. And that's why the zuhad, in all the books they say this, the people of zuhud, the people that give up wealth, a'qalu nas, they're the most rational, intelligent people. We have to lower our standards of living. Really, because we're living on a planet right now that's in peril because of all this wealth acquisition, all this greed, because that's the fundamental problem. It's about tama'. It's just wanting more. When is enough enough? You know, if you watch any program, you watch any of these animal shows, you know those animal programs? I was once in West Africa with an Egyptian American from New York, and we were in a Jeep out in the middle of the Sahara, and he saw all of these wild animals. He said, man, this is just like the Nature Channel. I said, no. The Nature Channel is like this. Yeah, you got it wrong. Right? But if you watch those programs, when the lion gets the zebra, watch the other zebras. You watch them. Because they're all running, but right when that lion gets the zebra, they all stop and they go back to eating. Because they know, Harvey's gone. The lion got his lunch. It's over. But the lion will not eat the whole flock, because the lion has a limit, a natural limit. Aristotle said man is the only one that has no natural limits. Inna al-insana la yatgha an ra'ahu istaghna. Surely man goes to excess when he deems himself wealthy. When he deems himself wealthy. Allah is the wealthy and we are the poor. Assalamu alaikum.